Welcome to The Lift Experience, a podcast to discuss all things foiling in the United Arab Emirates. Join us as we share the stoke of our foiling journey in the Middle East. This is the next episode where we're going to talk about wing foiling and basically how to make a start, how do you get into it, which gear to use, like which gear to start on, which conditions you should be looking for. There's obviously a lot in that. It's quite overwhelming to know where to start. So thought let's have a chat and
let's do it.
Yeah,
here we are, episode 2. It's taken a little while since episode 1, but let's try and get on it now, eh? So starting the journey in foiling, it's been super exciting for both of us, hasn't it?
Definitely.
But I think if we perhaps have a focus on the wing foiling today and think about some of the gear that might help a beginner get into the sport, and thinking about our light wind conditions and what's going to benefit somebody to make progress pretty early on. I was thinking as well, we live in a light wind area, but listening to other podcasts and watching videos, there's plenty of light wind areas, whether it's Thailand or Florida or some parts of the Mediterranean and what have you. So I think what we're saying here does apply to most parts of the world as well, actually.
Sure.
And actually, even if you live in a high wind area, some guys might want to get out in 10, 12 knots anyway, just to go and get out on the water. So let's do it.
Yeah, it's definitely a different ball game. I mean, when you have the lighter winds, you've got to be more. You need more different set of skills. I think. I mean, when the wind is completely blasting, you literally just got to get on and hang on. And you can be on a smaller board, and you can be with much smaller wing. Falls would probably be more severe as well in stronger wind. But with lighter wind, you actually got to work to get the foil up. And then once you're riding,
We were chatting to our friend who's moved back to Australia, and you were mentioning that technique-wise, you've got to develop good technique in light winds. I think if you're going out in those 20-knot days, you can be a typical guy and just wrestle it and try and activate the foil through just hankering on and just going for it. Whereas, with the light wind conditions that we normally get out here, 12 knots, you've got to develop, your technique, thinking about your wing positioning, your feet positioning, and so on. So, it becomes a little more finite in your abilities, and you've got to think a bit more carefully, I think. So, So perhaps tell us a bit about your entrance into foiling.
Cool, yeah. So, I mean, before we start that, let's just say that there are all these different disciplines within foiling, all very exciting in their own way. So I think we're going to deal mostly with wing foiling now. But just to mention some other ones, like obviously kite foiling. We have prone foiling, which is the surf foiling. We have tow foiling as well, the guys do behind boats and jet skis and stuff. And there's also the dock starting, which is becoming a bit of a thing lately for us because there's not a lot of other stuff happening. So we're going to talk about wing foiling now and the kind of gear that you need to get into that. So for me, I started with actually the wrong set of gear. I thought, okay, I can surf foil because I started with surf foiling. So thought, seeing as I can surf foil, let me kind of jump a step and let me go onto a smallish board. And that was a mistake because that's made it a longer process for me. So the lesson there is don't be afraid to start on beginner gear because it's going to speed up the learning journey. And I think the best way to deal with that, because I know the equipment's expensive, the best way to deal with that is to start on a cheap, even if it's repaired or if it's not nice looking, start on something cheaper so that you can get the benefit of that size gear, but then when the time comes to sell it, there's not too much of a loss. Because from what I've noticed across a lot of different people that I've seen, within 5 or 10 sessions, you're actually ready for another set of gear that's more suitable for you. So
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I ended up starting on a 70 litre board, but that was too small because my weight is 92. So then I actually stopped using that board and I got a 105 litre board. So that was kind of really helpful for me. So I started with that. I had a big wing, which was, I mean, at the time they weren't making 7 and 8s. The biggest one they had was a 6. I think Gong was making an 8 meter, but I mean, we don't have that brand here. So yeah, I started on a 6 meter with a 105 litre board and an 1800 centimeter squared foil. And that was it. You get out there on the water, you need, when you're learning, maybe about 15 knots or so. And as you get better, much less. But how about you? What was your first setup?
Well, funny enough, Sean, I bought your board, didn't I? That 105. So
that's right. Yeah,
that was my first board. Going back probably a year and a half now. Again, I'm low to mid 90s, hovering around there, kilograms. So yeah, had the 105. Gave me that little bit of an extra platform. 6 meter. Again, like you say, they weren't producing those bigger wings. The 6 was the biggest, but probably quite a nice size to start with. You know, not
definitely
too much, not too much rig to hold on to. Still fairly light in your hands, so you can just get used to the feel. And again, I also had the 85 centimeter mast with the 1800 sort of low aspect foil. And I think that was quite a good setup. Again, with us having a bit of a background in motorsports, that 105 for us was probably okay. But I see a lot of people starting on even old windsurf boards or SUP boards. Just to get that volume initially is really important, I think, just to get a feel of where your feet need to go and how the power comes through the rig and through your body and into the board and generating that forward momentum. So yeah, if you've got an old board, or even a new SUP, just jump on that perhaps to start off with for the first couple of times. But I think you make a good point. Don't worry too much about your initial gear because the progress is pretty quick and you are probably going to want to ship it on after maybe 10, 15, 20 sessions, depending on your rate of progress. So, yeah, like you say, look out for the windier days if you can. The 10 and 12 knot days, yeah, you can go and have a pootle around, but you're going to struggle to activate the foil on the sort of gear we had to start off with. Those 15 knot days are just ideal for you to power your wing, get used to the feeling of that power going straight through into the board and then connecting the foil and getting some proper forward motion to get that foil lifting. So yeah, look for a semi decent wind. It's going to really help your progress at the beginning. But yeah, that's where I started. 6 meter, 105, 1800, and I was looking for those up to 15 knot days that really made a difference. I'm sure you'd agree. It's you need that power in the wing.
Yeah, I think there's two main skills that you need to wing foil, and the challenge with the sport, even though wing foiling I think is the easiest way to foil. Maybe behind a boat, you could argue that behind a boat is easier, but because on the wing you start by standing already, and then you kind of taxi as you get a bit of wind, and then eventually the taxi becomes a flight. I do think the wing is it's a nice way to learn the foil, like in comparison to surf foiling, where you've got to actually paddle in, and in amongst that turbulence you've got to stand up and you've got to manage that. So two skills you got to learn at the same time. Let's say you have no knowledge of foiling or the ocean or water sports. You got to learn that feeling of the foil that now goes from not flying to flying. And that transition is quite a radical feeling, because for a moment there's a lot of instability. So that's one skill that you got to learn. And then of course holding the wing and the direction of where it catches the wind, and as you go bigger with the wings, you run the risk of the wingtips hitting the water. So these two skills alongside each other, I think this is what's maybe discouraging for people and why it takes a bit of time to just get over that hurdle, because you're only going to fly if these two things align at the same time. So that's why what I would recommend, and I do this, with my son Adam sometimes, but otherwise with my mate Toffee, we do it as well. What I'd recommend is if you can get your hands on a wing and like a longboard type of skateboard that's got the big wheels, this is a perfect way to practice one of those skills. So now I presume most people can stand on a skateboard and be able to ride that. At least now, that part on the ground is going to happen automatically. At least now you can put your attention on just getting that one skill right, which is holding the wing in the right spot. And when you're on a skateboard and the surface is relatively smooth, even a little bit of wind, even 6-7 knots is going to get you moving. So that's a really nice way to practice. And it's actually a very fun thing to do. I know in Dubai, they've got this like promenade type of path that runs along the beach. And the same in Quain. A lot of beaches have got this type of jogging track. So if you go there with a skateboard and with a wing, you'd be amazed how much fun you can get. And the faster you go, the more apparent wind you get, and then the faster you keep going. So it's actually, it's a great feeling. And really nice right to learn the wing skills. So
I think so. Yeah, it sounds good. I've never done that, but it looks good. It looks fun.
Super fun.
I've seen a few guys doing it in those car parks out the back of Dubai as well. Mate. I think if you have got a little bit of experience in wind sports, it's going to help. We've said that before. So if you have got a windsurf or kite surf background, then you understand the wind relatively well. And with that, I would say, as my friend has just done yesterday, he's got himself a wing and he's gone out on his old windsurf board and just had a play. I think it was probably 7 or 8 knots yesterday afternoon. He's already got a bit of understanding of the wind, so for him to go out and have a play on the water, no problem. He's I don't know, but he said he was quite successful. He was probably taxiing backwards and forwards and just getting used to the feel. I think if you haven't got experience, then it might be worth looking for some instruction initially, just for the first few lessons to get you used to the gear and the process behind setting up and getting on the water, and what direction are you going to be heading, where's the wind coming from, having those conversations. But I would say that's a good tip from you. If you can get on land and you're already a fairly proficient skateboarder, that would help. But if you've got a bit of a background, perhaps you're okay to get out there and have a bit of fun.
Yeah, I think that's, as you say, the SUP, getting on an SUP or an old windsurfer board. I know people who've done that as well. GCC online guys do it in the snow as well. So I think the idea there is to take these two skills, riding the foil and riding the wing, and kind of like just split them up so that you can be in a scenario where you kind of only learning one of them at a time. So it would be really helpful to go behind a boat maybe once, to get actually towed behind a boat with a foil.
Absolutely, because you're given power then, aren't you? You're given the power behind the boat. And if you're on a fairly big board and you're on your knees, you can start to feel that foil lift. Whereas with the wing, there's a bit more going on. You've got to generate that forward power to activate the foil.
Exactly.
But I think we'd agree that, and most people would say that if you want to get into the foiling, wing foiling is probably the best one to go with to start off with. I think it's the most amazing. Accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I think everybody who's foiling now are people who've been doing other sports. So this is what I see. So people who are wing foiling are not only people who, did nothing before. They're like ex-windsurfers who are wing foiling. And then you get ex-kite surfers who are kite foiling. And then you get ex-surfers that are prone foiling. So everybody's come from something else. And because foiling is this new exciting thing, and for me, the thing that's really, really exciting is that it's so efficient. It's using very little power to be able to ride in the ocean. And that's what gives it an advantage, I believe, over other sports, because you let's say you have a wave that comes through. This wave's got a certain amount of energy. Okay, and to ride that wave, you're going to need to have a certain kind of board, whether it's a long board or a short board or a SUP or whatever. So now with a foil, you now have that same wave, which another person riding an SUP is you riding that wave. You are riding that same wave, but you've got more energy at your disposal because the foil needs less to ride. So. To get back to your point, what's amazing is that everybody who's in their own little niche within foiling, they kind of feel like their thing is the best. Surf foilers are like, surf foiling is the way. And then wing foiling, it's like, okay, wing foiling, I mean, this is you and I and many other people now. Wing foiling is the business, we're fully into it. But everyone, there's other guys who are on foil drives, the little engine thing that makes it an e-foil.
But
and
then
they look at us and they're like,
yeah,
but these guys, they're like, you speak to them, and I have a few friends who have them, and they have lots of fun. You're like, why don't you come for a surf session, or why don't you come for a wing foil session? He's like, no, I'm on the foil drive and I'm having lots of fun. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like an arrogance. Everybody, there's a good vibe about it, but you do get a little bit, you get focused on your discipline. So at the moment, wing foil is our focus.
Yeah, I think that's the case. But then also, as you go down the rabbit hole of foiling, you start looking at other disciplines. So certainly for the first year, I was just wing foil. When can I get on the water?
Yeah.
But more recently, looking at those light wind options. So we've had a go at dock foiling now. Been up to Mal Quain and joined you in an attempted surf foil. Very poor attempt.
No, you guys are doing well.
But it's just fun, isn't it? And just trying to see how we can apply this foil to other scenarios, and particularly the light wind foiling. Wake foiling, I'm really, really enjoying as well. That is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, going back to the wing foiling, in terms of conditions as well, I know you've got slightly different conditions up in Mal Quain. We've got Jebel Ali down this way. This is a great flat water spot, and I think if you are beginning, you want to be in that flat water. I think that's super helpful. It takes away.
That's important. You got to be on flat water. Yeah,
you got to be. Yeah. So yeah, if you're not in flat water, you're looking. Even if it's just that little rolling wave, it's something else to contend with, and it does halter the progress of the foil in some respects, and you gaining that speed to get the foil lift. As you get sort of better, you can cope with that a bit more, I think. But initially, you want glass flat, just you, the wing, and the board. That's all you're worried about then. That would be my recommendation. So
yeah, for sure. So flat water is one of them.
You said you came down this way for your sort of beginner sessions, didn't you?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, one thing that's going to make it much easier to get into this industry is to become a little bit obsessed with it. And usually what happens with foiling, from what I've seen, from friends and social media and stuff, people, they're interested in foiling to begin with. Okay, whether it's surf foiling or wing foiling, whatever, you're interested in it. So you start checking out the gear, and then you maybe even test some gear. But at some point, it becomes like a personal goal or an obsession where you say, for me, I tested a board, signature board in Cape Town, which was, when I rode it, I was surf foiling, paddled in, and the first thing it did, it threw me off, and the board went that way and I went this way. And I came up, I'm like, what was that? That was like the hook. And I needed to know more. And from that point onwards, it became an obsession. So I did whatever I could to get my hands on a first set.
Exactly the same. Yeah. Exactly the same for me. 4-5 sessions in, started to feel decent lift, and a bit like planing in windsurfing, you get that first feel of the lift, or planing or windsurfing, and you're just like, I need some more of this, because it's such a great feeling. So yeah, again, that's a good point, isn't it? If you are a beginner, just pursue it a little bit, because as soon as you get that feeling, you're going to be hooked. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think you want to start by having a little bit of that obsession, okay? And then once you've got that, you're going to be naturally motivated to go down to the beach, and there's other things that are going to help. being around people who know how to do it, who can give you some tips. You don't necessarily need lessons. I mean, yes, lessons might speed things up, but I mean, at the end of the day, a person who's giving lessons, they are helping you by understanding which day is good, like making a call when the wind is enough for you, knowing which spot to go to, and do's and don'ts and good practices. These kind of things you can get from people. So I'm not saying don't do lessons, but I mean, I never went to lessons, and many other people never went to lessons.
But I think you are an experienced waterman anyway. I think if a lot of people find comfort in lessons, don't they? So I'd recommend, I didn't have lessons either. But I was researching and watching God knows how many videos online and whatever. So I would say don't be afraid to take a lesson or two, just to get yourself, particularly if you're completely new to the whole thing. I'd recommend it, to be honest with you.
For sure.
Just to get you can, that's your contact. I know there's a few guys out here doing lessons that, they've still got people who had a few lessons with them and now they're good friends and they're foiling together, and it's a nice way in to meet people as well. I think if you do get lessons, I would recommend it.
Definitely.
If you have got a background, you might be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, put it this way, what I meant is you don't have to do lessons to get into the sport.
You don't.
Like any other sport, if you have some training, it's going to make things easier, but it's not going to be a deal breaker. I think you still can get into the sport. At the same time as becoming obsessed, something that's really important is to understand the ocean and the wind conditions. So, over the years, I've built a few weather stations and made a website because I like to have eyes on exactly what's happening. Some countries have very reliable wind, when you have a forecast, it arrives. But here, it's very flaky. You can have a forecast and then nothing arrives. You can have no forecast and then the wind picks up. So, we have these weather stations, and it's important to understand what are the directions that you need to be riding in, because generally when you're doing water sports, you should be riding in some kind of onshore wind, because if something goes wrong and a piece of equipment breaks or whatever, you're just going to be pushed back to the shore. That's kind of like a golden rule of water sports, is to with wing foiling, you can kind of break that rule a little bit because it's a bit easier to self-rescue. But with kite surfing, for sure, you should never ride an offshore wind.
And with onshore winds, you're normally going to get a little bit of chop, which is going to make your beginner experience nigh impossible. Like I say, if you've got this flat water lagoon area that we've got down in Jebel Ali, you get a cross-shore breeze there and it comes over the bank and it's absolutely perfect. So, it just depends on where you are.
And there's a rescue boat.
And there's a rescue boat as well. Yeah, so it's the ideal spot. You mentioned about sort of sticking with it and getting to that sort of feeling of, I've made some progress. And I think that's really important as well. I remember when I bought that board off you, you said, just stick with it. And that also stuck with me when you said that, because you go for a few sessions, you're like, oh, okay, I know what I should be doing, and I see these other guys flying around, and I want to be doing that. And you have to put a little bit of time in at the beginning to feel the lift and the amazing feeling that you get from it. But stick with it is also a big thing. It's.
I think for me, the obsession, you got to be like living it and waking up thinking about it and going to bed thinking about it. And like anything, there's a learning curve. You have to put in the time, and there's going to be, unfortunately, there's going to be some bummer sessions when the wind is not enough. You're going to go all the way down there. You're going to rig the gear on the beach. You're going to inflate the wing, and you're going to go out into the water, and then the wind's going to drop. And you're going to have to swim back, and there's going to be a few swear words.
But you've still been on the water, mate. You've still been out there. You've got a bit of sunshine.
For sure.
You've freshened up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting thing, and it's fitness. It's great to ride with friends, and
just being outdoors, isn't it, as well, and just...
Yeah, and I think we're really fortunate to have this, to be like around for this type of revolution. I mean,
definitely.
It's, if you look around the world, it's taken the world, like by storm kind of thing in the last.
If only we were 16 though, mate, and not 40.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't need to be doing double back rolls and stuff. I'm happy to just be cruising on a few waves, eh?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, have a look around. Just a few years ago, they made the first wing, and now it's every major kart brand has got in on it.
Yeah, it's really flown, isn't it? Yeah.
And
so if you're listening in, you need to get into wing foiling or some sort of foiling because it's going to be really big.
Yeah, exactly. And so this other thing we need to speak about as well is kind of where you get equipment from. So you and I, we've put together like a bit of a list that we're going to put a little QR code on the screen here. People can just scan it to get like a constantly updated list of just where to buy new gear from. So we'll put that on the screen here.
And that's specific to our part of the world, isn't it?
Exactly. So specific to the Middle East, I mean, we have brands, a few different brands here, which you could just keep an eye on that list. But for a first set of gear, the best thing is going to probably be secondhand, because that way you're not going to pay a premium, and it's going to make it easier to kind of transition to a more of a intermediate set of gear, which then you can justify buying something new.
Sure.
Yeah,
good. So if we were to summarize then in terms of gear for a beginner, someone at our size, 90-ish kilos, or anybody, you'd be looking for at least probably 20 plus on your volume. So if you're 90 kilos, you want probably at least 110-ish, something like that. If you want to go really comfy, go even bigger. I would say at the beginning that, you're just feeling the board, you're feeling the skills. You could be on that big old sub. That's fine. But just bear in mind that your gear is probably going to be replaced fairly quickly as you progress. So I think 6 meter was good for us, wasn't it, as well? The wing size there, that suits most conditions. It's going to take you up to 15, 20 knots very comfortably, and probably down towards 12. So, one board, one wing, one foil, one life.
If it was
does the trick to start off with.
To be honest, for me, I mean, there is one way of doing it where you can buy a wing and then learn the wing skills, and then later on you can get the foil. Like, if it was me, I would say there is this awesome sport that we have access to right now. There is a lot of secondhand gear available. We live in a country where, yes, the wind is light, but it's actually quite a nice place to do the sport because the ocean is not wild. I mean, there's other countries where you need to be careful. You need to actually find a lake to learn on. But here we can actually, a lot of spots are flat enough to learn on. So I would say my advice would be do a little bit of research. Find a group of people at a local spot and ask a few questions, get first-hand knowledge. Find a setup, like a second-hand piece of gear setup, and just go all in. And, commit to a lesson if you're happy with that. Otherwise, slog it out at a flat water spot while other people are riding, get some tips. That would be and you just got to persevere. That would be my recommendation. So, as you say, a board that's about 20 liters more than your weight. So if it's 90 plus 20, that'd be 110. A 6 meter is a nice general size. It can work up to quite strong wind. It can also work on the low end side. And then for foils, 75 centimeter mast is kind of like a standard beginner type of mast. As it gets longer, it gets more difficult. Foil something in the 1800 range. Unless your weight is really low, unless you're like a 60 kg person, you could probably be on like a 1500 foil. But
but go big on the foil to start off with. It's going to help you, I think. That low aspect, we won't go into that, but your low aspect, big foil to start off with is generally it's going to help you progress. but you are going to want to ship it on eventually. That's the only thing. So just bear that in mind. Second-hand gear all the way.
Yeah, for sure. So second-hand gear, the best way to buy something like that would be to Brazil. But otherwise, there's a wing foil WhatsApp group. I think at some point there was a Telegram group as well. I don't use Telegram, but I mean, in the community, geez, that's the best way to speak to somebody directly in the community.
Yeah. But would you say, I'm just thinking about this now, you probably don't have to go second-hand on the wings, do you? Because if you think it's going to be the sport for you, invest in like I've got the 8 and the 5.5, bought those new, and, they're going to last you for a while, aren't they? It's, I wouldn't say you have to. Well, you might not have to go second-hand. This is what we say. We're plugging the second-hand route, but of course, if you want to buy new, go for it.
I think the reality is you're going to pay double. So I would say, as a rough estimate for a board, a foil and mast complete, and a wing, you're going to pay maybe about 7,000 dirhams, give or take, second-hand. And if you buy that same setup brand new, it's going to be double that. So, I mean, that's if you got some money lying around that you don't need, can buy everything new. But I started with second-hand stuff. Just be careful with what you're buying, of course. I mean, it's not all pieces of second-hand gear have been cared for. So,
get to the beach and speak to people and find out what people are riding, and
for sure
get their recommendations as well. There's, like we said, the community is pretty friendly, isn't it? So
definitely,
I'm sure if you chat to most wingers down on the beach, they're going to give some pretty decent advice. And
I think everybody who's on this foiling journey is so obsessed and so stoked on it that, I mean, it's human nature. When you love something, you're enjoying it so much, you want to spread that, get somebody else involved. So don't be afraid to speak to people. I think people are going to be very welcoming, and even us.
Absolutely.
If you guys want to reach out to us as well, we'd be happy to help.
For sure.
Cool. So I think that wraps it up.
Great.
It's been a good chat. Thanks, Ash.
For sure. Yeah, thanks, mate. And we'll do it again soon.
We'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, cool. All right. See you soon.
Cheers, bro.